Amazon is considered the largest e-commerce giant in the world, allowing customers to order products from distant parts of the world before safely arriving at their front door. While we have a tendency to suggest this was only achievable due to modern technology and innovations. What if we told you a prosperous merchant empire operated just like Jeff Bezos over 700 years ago? This is the enduring story of the merchant empire of Venice, a maritime empire that dominated trade between the East and the West for centuries. They sourced goods in one distant part of the world before personally delivering them right to the door of prominent kingdoms, creating a sophisticated trading network that still influences commerce today. The story of Venice, a city unlike any other of the era, is a tale of resilience, ingenuity, and the relentless pursuit of prosperity. Unlike Jeff Bezos' mighty empire, Venice didn't start out in a small garage. Instead, it emerged from the chaos that followed the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th and 6th centuries. While the exact origins of this maritime civilization are shrouded in mystery, it is believed that various inhabitants of the mainland sought refuge in the Venetian lagoon following frequent raiding by Huns and Lombards. These refugees took shelter amongst the marshy islands, establishing small settlements that offered protection from these tumultuous times. In a remarkable display of ingenuity, they would turn this watery wasteland into one of the most sophisticated maritime civilizations of the ancient world. But how did they do it? It all began around the 7th century, with the emergence of the Republic of Venice, headed by a figurehead known as a doge or leader. The doge was the chief magistrate and leader of the Venetian Republic and was chosen by the ruling families of Venice. While the doge was the head of state and held symbolic authority, real power resided with the aristocracy and various councils that ran the republic. Historical accounts suggest the first doge, Paolo Lucio Anafesto, was appointed in 697 AD, marking the beginning of a structured governance that would evolve over centuries. Venice's strategic location and its growing maritime trade with the Byzantine Empire and other eastern states allowed it to prosper. But at this early part of Venetian history, they were still under the protection of the Byzantine Empire, and this displeased many of the aristocrats. After power struggles among the city's patrician families, a drastic shift in how the republic functioned occurred, and doges were now elected. The first doge of this new era was Orso Ipato, a visionary leader who started his governance in 727 AD. Motivated by a growing sense of independence amongst his people, Orso set into motion the first steps that would eventually see the Venetian Republic break free from Byzantine control. Internal political struggles and conflicts between pro-Byzantine and anti-Byzantine factions followed for decades to come. These conflicts often revolved around issues of sovereignty and trade, with different factions advocating for closer ties with the Byzantine Empire or for greater independence. Eventually, Doge Obelerio and his brother allied with the Franks to free themselves from the Byzantine grip, placing Venice under the authority of the Italian king Pippin. This led to a pro-Byzantine reaction, and by 814 AD a treaty between the Franks and Byzantines guaranteed Venice's political and legal independence. Several decades later, the Doge was negotiating international agreements independently. This set the stage for the rise of the independent and expansive maritime empire that Venice would soon become. You see, although Venice was theoretically part of the Catholic world, it enjoyed privileged relations with the Byzantine Empire, and by acquiring the relics of Saint Mark from Alexandria in the 9th century, it effectively declared itself independent of both Pope and Patriarch. The Rialto Islands on the Venetian lagoon slowly morphed into the iconic floating city of Venice, a place that not only captivated the attention of Roman emperors and foreign merchants, but also intrigued them with its unique, beautiful architecture and charm. But how did a once barren collection of islands managed to transform itself into one of the most luxurious cities in the ancient world? Well, the answer is simple. They traded far and wide. Venice's rise to prominence was significantly aided by its strategic location. Its insular position allowed it to steer clear of the complicated politics of the Italian mainland, enabling it to focus on maritime endeavors. This strategic location also provided easy access to vital resources, such as salt and timber, both of which are essential for shipbuilding and trade. Venice's rise was fueled by its mastery of maritime trade. From the 9th to the 12th centuries, it developed into a powerful maritime empire, controlling key trade routes and establishing a vast sea empire. The Republic's embrace of sound monetary policies, especially its reliable gold ducat, underpinned growing confidence in Venetian trade and finance, further strengthening its position in international commerce. The city's fleets protected sea routes against piracy, allowing it to flourish as a trade center between Western Europe and the East, especially with the Byzantine Empire and Asia. Venice's dominance extended to the control of most of the islands in the Aegean, including Crete and Cyprus in the Mediterranean, and it became a major power broker in the Near East. When it comes down to it, the Venetian Republic operated a lot more like a merchant corporation than a traditional city-state, and there are a few reasons for this. While the Venetian state might have looked like a typical republic from the outside, with a heavy emphasis on trade, as we take a closer look, it becomes apparent it ran more like an e-commerce company reminiscent of the modern era. The Venetian state was effectively run by and for merchant elites, with a unique political structure that guaranteed property rights and the enforceability of contracts. The governing class and religious leadership worked together to produce a tolerant environment, where foreign merchants could operate with relative freedom. At the height of the Republic, Venice was dominated by a merchant capitalist elite who not only controlled the government, but also shaped its policies to serve their interests. The Great Council, which was the main governing body, was initially open to all male citizens, but was eventually limited to a select group of noble families. This concentration of power allowed the merchant elite to maintain their control over the government and ensure that their interests were represented. I guess you could say the aristocrats of Venice better represented modern-day board members than the council of a kingdom. This is apparent in the Venetian state's institutions and policies that were designed to promote trade and commerce, with a focus on maritime power and the protection of merchant shipping. The state's naval power was used to protect its trade routes and expand its influence in the Mediterranean. Despite the formidable strength of their navy, the Venetian state always prioritized trade. Their approach was akin to a medieval version of Amazon, with a delicate and sophisticated network of fleets, warehouses, and outposts across the world, mirroring the operations of Bezos's company. In fact, the biggest enterprise in Venice was the Arsenal, a public shipyard created in 1104, which employed thousands of workers and was the first example of production line assembly. Shipbuilding was considered far too costly for the average merchant, so instead, the state-owned Arsenal built the ships and contacted them out to private groups of merchants using public auctions. Essentially, the government's control over the ships was a demonstration of its power and influence. This control allowed for the coordination of trade expeditions, with ships organized into distinct groups, each with a specific destination. This strategic organization not only maximized trade opportunities by regulating the goods traded in certain locations at different times of the year, but also ensured the protection of the convoys by the powerful navy. As we said, Venice was a city centered on trade above all else, with its policies and institutions designed to promote commerce and maritime power. Similar to Amazon's contemporary global logistics network, Venice's trading empire was bolstered by a web of colonial possessions and trading posts. The city-state strategically established colonies in various parts of the Mediterranean, including Crete, Cyprus, and the Peloponnese. These colonies, serving as pivotal bases for Venetian merchants, not only provided a secure foothold for trade in the region, but also underscored the strategic brilliance of Venice's expansion. Venice also established trading posts in various parts of the world, including the Black Sea, the Aegean, and the Indian Ocean. These trading posts were used to facilitate trade and provide a secure location for merchants to conduct their business. They sailed to the ports of the Eastern Mediterranean, such as Constantinople, Alexandria, and Antioch, to trade with the Byzantines and other regional powers. They also established connections with the Islamic world, trading with merchants from Egypt, Syria, and other parts of the Middle East. It truly was a maritime trading empire that covered the extent of the known world. The Venetians traded in a wide range of goods. They were particularly known as a major hub in the spice trade, sourcing and selling pepper, cinnamon, ginger, and cloves, which they obtained from the Byzantine Empire and sold on to wealthy aristocrats in Europe. They also traded in textiles such as wool and cotton, which were highly valued for their quality and craftsmanship. The Venetian merchants also transported high-value items like silks, brocades, and precious metals like gold. Essentially, if there was a market for it, the Venetians traded it. This led them to transport vast amounts of goods across the known world, ranging from salt and cheese to wheat, wood, and even manufactured products like paper and soap. This diversity in their trade portfolio, including the barbaric practice of slave trading, demonstrates their adaptability and versatility in the market, and why they dominated trade in the Mediterranean. Venetian merchants had a highly complex trading network. They were involved in a triangular trade system where they exchanged Western products for gold in North Africa, used the gold to acquire spices in Egypt, and then traded luxury goods in Constantinople before returning to Italy. What made their business model so profitable was their ability to buy in bulk and mark up their products before shipping them off to Europe. But what truly set the Venetian merchants apart from their competitors was their attention to detail in the record-keeping department. In an era without computer automation, the Venetians were forced to record everything using detailed shipping manifests and contacts, and they did it better than any other culture in the world. Venetian merchants were masters of commerce, and contracts were the lifeblood of their operations. Just as in our modern era, contracts were the cornerstone of Venetian trade. The successful operation of a trading company from Venice was a complex task, and the merchant's time was best spent managing the business, not traveling the world to deliver goods. Therefore, they employed agents to transport the goods on their behalf, all bound by a specific form of contract known as a colleganza. This was a partnership agreement specifically designed for a single trading voyage and involved two main parties: the stans or investor and the tractor or traveling agent. Under this arrangement, the merchants in Venice played a crucial role, providing all the capital and goods for long-distance trade. The agents, on the other hand, transported these goods to various trade posts throughout the world. The overseas agents would then use the proceeds to purchase new goods, which would later be brought back for sale in the Venetian market. The contracts were so detailed and included a pre-arranged percentage that would go to the agent. This particular arrangement limited both the risk and liability for both parties, and would later serve as an inspiration for the development of trade in the East Indies. This innovative method allowed for a better flow of goods, as the agents often knew the local markets. They had the freedom to decide where to trade, guided by specific feedback from the merchant centered on the type of goods they wanted to deal with. This flexibility was a key feature of the system. You might be asking, well, why didn't the agent not just sell off all of the merchant's goods and keep the money for themselves, never to be seen again? The beauty of the contract lay in the trust it fostered. Agents were first selected from the merchant's personal network, meaning it wasn't just a random individual they didn't trust. Thus, when the agent signed the contract, the threat of social punishment was enough to motivate them to avoid any kind of misconduct or unprofessional behavior. The colleganza was closely tied to the development of venture accounting. Venetian merchants used a system where each trading venture was treated as a separate unit. This meant that each shipment of goods had its own dedicated account in the ledger. This system allowed merchants to easily calculate the profit or loss on each individual venture, providing valuable insights into their trading activities. These accounts meticulously tracked all the expenses associated with a particular shipment, including the cost of goods, packing, and transportation. They also recorded the arrival of goods and provided a detailed invoice and any expenditures. This level of detail in every single aspect of trade resulted in one of the most sophisticated record-keeping systems of the medieval period. One further aspect that helped Venetian trade run smoothly was the implementation of an early credit system centuries before banks became mainstream. As Venetian merchants couldn't take any form of digital payment like we can today, they got creative with credit. They did this by leveraging the expertise of notaries, innkeepers, and other professionals to facilitate loans and transactions. They also utilized government-backed public debt mechanisms like the Monte Vecchio and developed innovative forms of credit, which served as a form of financial guarantee. Venetian merchants were early adopters of letters of credit and bills of exchange, which facilitated long-distance trade. Think of it like a medieval IOU. These letters of credit were essentially promises of payment, allowing merchants to access funds in different cities without carrying large amounts of physical currency. This system played a crucial role in supporting Venice's thriving economy and its prominence in European trade. More often than not, they counted on innkeepers and the bastioneri or guards to provide small, interest-free loans to their customers. This informal system provided access to credit for individuals who might not have qualified for loans from more established sources. By the 13th century, Venice was still experiencing significant growth as Europe and the Middle East prepared to go to war in a prolonged series of holy conflicts we now know as the Crusades. During this period, Venice extended its vast naval fleet to the Crusaders for a price. In return, the Crusaders aided the Venetians in reclaiming Zara, known today as Zadar. This was a pivotal move, as Zara was a crucial port city on the Adriatic coast. Its control was instrumental for Venetian trade and military supremacy in the region. The Crusaders, unable to fully compensate for the use of Venetian ships, agreed to sack Zara. This act would allow them to loot the city and use the riches to settle their debts. However, the crusade took an unexpected turn to Constantinople. This diversion proved to be a strategic move for the Venetians, as they gained significant territories in the Aegean Sea, including Crete and Euboea, after the city was sacked. This expansion solidified Venice's control over crucial trade routes and resources. By the High Middle Ages, Venice had amassed considerable wealth through its control of trade between Europe and the Levant. However, the true pinnacle of Venetian power was reached in the 15th century. During this era, the Republic boasted a navy of over 3,300 ships and held sway over much of Venetia, including Verona and Padua. Under the rule of Doge Francesco Foscari, Venice had reached its zenith. The Republic's territories extended over much of the modern Veneto, Friuli, and parts of Lombardy, as well as Istria and Dalmatia. Overseas dominions included Euboea and Aegina. However, as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end, and what is often considered one of the greatest maritime civilizations in human history was not immune to this fate. Venice's decline began in the 16th century. The discovery of new trade routes to the Americas and around Africa bypassed the Mediterranean, diminishing Venice's role as a central trading hub. Venice's ships were not designed for long ocean voyages, and it failed to modernize its naval force. Another factor in Venice's decline was its strategic missteps, particularly its increasing involvement in the politics of the Italian mainland. This diversion of resources and attention from its maritime empire, which was its main interest in its earlier years, proved to be a costly decision. The need to expand its territory on the Italian mainland, to increase its taxable territory, to pay for armies capable of standing up to those of France, the Habsburgs, and the Ottomans, was a decision that would haunt Venice. The rise of the Ottoman Empire also posed a significant threat. The Ottomans gradually gained control of the mainland, facing the Venetian islands and leading to constant conflict. Venice lost key territories and faced increasing pressure from both the Ottomans and the expanding European powers. By the late 18th century, Venice was in a state of irreversible decline. The French Revolution and Napoleon's campaigns in Italy led to the final blow, the end of the Venetian Republic in 1797. Venice was handed over to Austria, marking the definitive end of its long history as a maritime empire.